For anyone who will be hearing the recording later, I want everybody to know who Stephen is. And so I want to do your tell everybody who you are. This is for recording purposes, that we're just thrilled, obviously. Stephen's doing another one of these because you are such a good presenter, and your hold on one second. Your information that you share with us is so good and so dynamic and so informative. We're just thrilled to have you back doing another call with us. I want to welcome everybody. Obviously, this is Positive Charge. I think everybody here knows about Positive Charge, and for anybody who's listening to or watching the recording later, Positive Charge is a nonprofit group whose primary and really exclusive mission is to amplify kindness. And this is an example of one of our projects that we are doing in 2020 that is a virtual project that has come just because of the pandemic. Usually everything we do is in person, and this is something we're doing that is virtual that we had unplanned. Anyway, these are really wonderful, and it's a whole series on different topics that are all listed on our website at positivechargepdx.org/mentors. This particular one is about starting your own business, and Stephen is going to be talking about that. I want to let everybody know who Stephen is. Stephen Kaufman. He is known among friends as a brainiac with a love of learning. He graduated with honors from Stanford. He spent the first 20 years of his career in the US, Europe, and Asia, specializing in operations, logistics management, and marketing, and then founded a technology company for the waste industry that sold in 2018. He became CEO of a medical billing firm and now consults for companies on operations, product, and marketing projects. He is the author of one nonfiction book and has 3 novels with a 4th on the way. Stephen's journey, both personally and professionally, led to an insatiable curiosity about the mind and how it works, giving him a unique brand of clarity, energy, and optimism. And we are so thrilled, I can't emphasize that enough, to welcome Stephen back to our Coaching Connection series. Take it away.
Great to be here. Everyone can hear me okay? So good. Like I always tell people, chat questions along the way. There'll be one natural little breaking point, but I'm all about interactive. So turn your cameras on if you know how to use them, and let's have some fun here. So let me fire up my presentation and then attempt to show you the right thing here. Hang on a sec. Let me share my screen. Advanced multiple participants can share simultaneously.
What's that?
Oh, there we go. That should work and share. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's roll. So we're going to talk about owning your own business. Is it time, and what do I need? And there's really 2 parts to this, and I'll jump into that in a minute. So just to augment that wonderful introduction, thank you very much, Sally, for that. You know, it's all about, do I even have the street cred to be able to talk to you about this? So I'll run you real briefly through my very first company. As you can tell by how bad that logo is, was a company called Opera Systems. And my boss way back when at a company called Wang Labs and I were going to do mice and keyboards where it would be in colored plastic that you could see through, because that was a big deal back in the 90s. And so that was the first one I almost got off the ground. And then from there, some buddies and I started a company called Rent a Dumpster. And guess what we used to do? You know what the mission of that company was? Yep, you could rent a dumpster. So that was our first online piece. And then I started Routeware, which made onboard computers and analytics software for garbage trucks. And that's the one that we sold in 2018, which was just a thrilling day, being a serial entrepreneur. So that was really cool. And then I co-wrote the book, The Garbageman's Guide, and we got that company off the ground. And for 3 years was doing lectures and TV and keynotes. And that was great fun. And now I run a company called Red Fender Consulting, where we consult. So I've started 5 companies in my life so far. So I hope that gives me a little bit of credibility to talk about our topic tonight. And the question really is, well, what's changed? And the answer is absolutely everything right now. I mean, right now, especially when you've just graduated from school or you're fairly new in your career, jobs are scarce. And they're very different. This whole working from home thing, it's totally different than where it was before. And the question that was asked earlier, is it worth, great, I got into Harvard or Stanford to do an MBA, and if I have to do it virtually, is it worth it? And so those are very, very real questions, because being there in person is totally different than sitting behind a computer screen. And people are beginning to question the value of an advanced degree in this very unusual moment in our history. And then for those that wanted to go apprentice, whether it's an internship or if you're literally apprenticing in a craft, you know, half the time you can't do it right now because COVID has got issues with being around other people. So that's a completely different landscape. And so it's falling into this question that people are asking, which is it time to start something on my own? And I don't think there's ever been a more relevant time to ask that question. So where it becomes obvious is, yeah, but I don't have any experience. How in the world am I supposed to start something if I don't know, I don't have 20 or 30 years. So I was wrestling with that while I was putting that together. Yeah, and then I found this. Some kid that's been trading Pokemon cards decides to take that knowledge and see if he can parlay it into baseball cards. And oh yeah, he just sold a $1.8 million baseball card. So I don't want to talk about whether you have the experience or not, because you know more than you actually think that you know. And my goal in this presentation tonight is to clear that question out of the way. Do you know as much about your topic as somebody that's been doing it for 30 years? No. Is that relevant right now to what we're talking about? Absolutely not, because there are so many entrepreneurs that have done so well through the ages that don't have that depth of experience, or they don't have advanced degrees. Some haven't even finished high school, and they've gone on to form some of the most successful companies in the world. So let's put that aside, because this is about leveraging what you do know, not focusing on what you don't. So the first part of the talk is, okay, Kaufman, I can get my brain around that. So what education am I going to need? And so I'm going to focus that if you're thinking about your own company, the first place I want to start is, well, what is it that you know? What's your content knowledge? In other words, what knowledge in your particular field of expertise do you have? And then, for example, to sell a product, what kind of education do you think you need in order to make you a content expert? All right. So the next piece is, all right, well, I've got knowledge, I've got skills, I've got a degree, I've got a certification. So then the next piece are, what are the mechanics of a company in terms of running it that you can take that expertise and bring it to market? Now, I'm a finance and operations guy. I think that literally is the heartbeat of a company. But you obviously need marketing and you need sales to go with it. And I'm going to get into the details of that in the second part of the presentation tonight. But the third big piece is the customer piece of it. And that's the marketing and the sales. So I want to drill down a little bit on each one of these three categories. So let's start with this idea of knowledge and skill, okay? Because that's sort of your first piece. As you're noodling, Do I want to step out on my own? So the first thing is, how much of an expert are you? And again, I'm not so much interested in, well, I don't have 30 years of experience. It's like, take the inventory of what you know now and how much of an expert are you? So drilling down on that, is that knowledge distinctive? In other words, if everybody kind of knows the same amount, do you have some other knowledge that makes you distinctive compared to that? Now, the next logical question is that knowledge disruptive? Like, not only do I know a lot, I know that probably nobody knows, and I could start to disrupt the way people are doing business in this particular industry. And then you'd ask yourself, okay, well, I might have a piece of that and it's disruptive, but do I have enough knowledge where I kind of feel like I have a pretty complete picture of this business that I would want to go into? All right. So those are the kind of key pieces to ask yourself around your knowledge. But knowledge is one thing, but skill goes hand in hand with it. Skill is about how sharp are your skills that allow you to execute that knowledge. Like, literally take all those thoughts in your brain and actually do something with them. And so knowledge and skills are two very different things. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about skills as we go a little bit deeper. But let's say you've answered, yeah, hey, you know what? I kind of know a lot about this. I know stuff that a lot of people don't know because I keep getting that feedback all the time, like, wow. Every time I talk about this, people are like, I've never heard it discussed like that. And you know what? I'm pretty sharp at this. I think I know how to bring this to market. Then you have to ask, okay, just like I went through to try and give you some street cred about my knowledge, do you need some credibility? So for example, let's say, you know what? I know a ton about SharePoint. I used it in college or the Adobe Creative Suite, and man, I could just make that thing mow the lawn for me. So then the question comes, well, do you need just some more certifications? I don't need to go get an MBA. I just need some additional certifications. So I'll go become a Microsoft certified professional or whatever it is for your product or service. Now, remember when I started my very first job, I was there for about 6 months and I went and got APICS certified, the American Production Inventory Control Society, because my first job was to master schedule a factory. And for me, I thought I would do better at that by sitting through a bunch of courses, and I got myself a certification. It opened up a whole vista of knowledge, and I could put some initials after my name, and that was extremely helpful. Maybe that's the piece that you need. Or apprenticeship could be the next piece. And there are some creative apprenticeships that are taking place right now over the same medium that we're using right now, which is Zoom. Or maybe the answer is, yeah, you know what? I can't move with my own business. I got to go get an MBA, or I've got to do some advanced degree. You'll know based on that whether or not you need that additional credibility. So now here's that second piece I was talking about, which is the business knowledge, okay? Well, I think finance is a very important part of it, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? I'm thinking that you need a firm grasp of the basics, okay? I'm not talking about that you have to go out and become a CPA in order to figure this thing out, okay? But it is not acceptable for you to basically say, I have the great idea. I'm just going to go out and do it and the money will figure itself out. That's never going to work for you long term, because the money is such an important part of the success of your company. So I'm really talking about managing cash. And in a small company, cash is king, right? Do I have enough to pay my bills? What kind of organization do I build? What kind of financial controls are there? Can I read a profit and loss statement or understand a balance sheet so I know what my assets and liabilities are as I grow my company? And are there certain key metrics that measure the health of my firm? So that's what I'm talking about as far as the basics of finance. And then we get into operations, and that's all about logistics. How do you actually bring that product or service that you're mulling around in your mind to market? So let's say you're thinking about a product that you want to bring. Who's going to build it? How do you distribute it? Does it go to a distributor and then they sell it to a dealer? Are you going straight to a store and trying to get shelf space? Who are my vendors and how do I select them? Or if you're thinking about a service instead of a product, okay, I want to sell myself on an hourly basis. Well, how do I keep time? And how do I create a project and then manage my way through that project? What are the communication tools I'll use with my client? Are they using Slack? Are we using SharePoint? Am I creating a shared board in my Trello board? These are all little things that you'll think about as you figure out the logistics around your service. And then the most important thing, no matter what you're doing, how do you offer support? Whether it's technical support, if it's a product, support for your clients when you're doing something for them and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, what's the policy? So they can get a hold of you to keep it moving. So that's what I mean about the business knowledge piece of it. And if we think about the third part, marketing and sales knowledge, again, you're just noodling right now, do I go for this? And what information, what knowledge do I need? Well, you got to know how to market and sell, right? That's absolutely critical. So what's your value proposition? If what's your elevator pitch? Literally, you're in an elevator, someone turns and they say, hey, how's it going? It's fine. What do? Can you rip that off in 10 seconds? So that when it's done, before those elevator doors open, they've already given you a business card and say, you need to call me. That's cool. That's what an elevator pitch is. You're that in touch with what you do. What's your company look like? What's your logo design, your colors, your fonts? Do you have a feel for that? If you're going to market with a product, what's it look like? What's the packaging look like? How am I going to find and attract customers? And I'll get into some of the specifics of that a little bit deeper in the presentation. But here's the killer. If you're working by yourself or you're a small company, once you get that gig, let's say you sell your service to somebody and they give you that project and you dive headfirst in and 3 months goes by, you're just like, oh my God, there's sand flying everywhere. You're doing such a good job. And then it's done. And you pop your head back out and guess what you didn't do? You didn't keep marketing. And all of a sudden, where's my next customer? So it's a tough trap. And so this is something you'll have to think about when you're an entrepreneur starting your own firm. And then of course, the sales piece. Do I need to build a sales force to get the word out? What's my channel strategy? How do I compensate my sales folks? What's my pricing model? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is sort of the marketing and sales piece. So there's 3 kind of big picture pieces in, well, what knowledge would I need if I wanted to get something off the ground? Okay. And now you might be thinking, all right, Stephen, I'm still feeling pretty good about this idea that I've got, and I might actually do this. Well, good, but stop. Now, don't ask me why I chose a red pepper with a stop sign to make this point, other than it was a really cute graphic and I really like it. So I'm using a red pepper with a stop sign and tough, live with it. So anyway, I thought this was great because this is the most important thing you're gonna do before you flip the switch to, yep, I'm going for it. You absolutely have to prove that there's demand for what you want to bring to market. Now, what do I mean by that? So I'm sticking with my red pepper here. Ask yourself, if you're a customer, would you pay $175 an hour for the knowledge that you think you can bring? Or would you pay $4.99 or whatever that price is you're thinking of for that product? So jump to the other side of the table. Ask yourself, is there a scarcity of people offering that knowledge or skill? So if you thought to yourself, well, wow, I've actually kind of got distinctive or disruptive knowledge and I've got skills, ask yourself, are there 30 other people that are trying to bring that to market? Or is that a big empty void that you may be able to fill? Is there a void in the market? Is there real demand for it? And this is important. I really don't recommend you think about opening a bakery right now or a coffee shop. It's really not a good time. In other words, be smart. In this, we don't know how long this is going to go on, and we don't know what the landscape's going to look like on the other side of this. Are we permanently at home? Is Zoom now part of our life, just like our cell phones are? So ask yourself, is this business idea COVID compatible in case there's a variation of this craziness that we're all in right now? Have you done any market trials to try and prove whether or not there really is a need for this? Who would you be competing with? When I showed you Opera systems, I actually took it all the way through packaging. I found a company overseas. They made us these really cool, like this lime green mouse that you could see the guts inside. It was so cool. And I designed the packaging, and I was living in Ireland at the time. And Logitech had a huge factory there. And I thought, you know what? They either could invest in us and I could trade equity for manufacturing capacity, or maybe they would just be my vendor, right? So I walk in and I'm like so excited. And I sit down, and the manager, all these people come to the meeting and they're grabbing new people. Like, oh my God, this is great. When we finish the meeting, I think the deal's done, right? And the room clears and the factory manager's there, and he looks at all my stuff on the table and he says, this is some of the best product I've ever seen. I'm like, great. And he says, don't do it. I'm like, but you just told me this is great. And he said, yeah, we're going to throw a couple million at clear colored product that you can see through just to see if there's any market demand for it. And we're going to crush you, because 2 million for us, yeah, we sneeze in that. 2 million for you, you're dead in the you're dead on arrival. And sure enough, within 6 months, not only clear colored plastic, leopard skin, tiger stripes, oh my gosh, it's like, thank you, because we would have gotten killed. So you got to know what your competitive landscape looks like. Are you going to be violating anybody's trademark? Now, this is important because you can use a trade name if it's in a different industry. So, and not run afoul of somebody. However, you can't use Coca-Cola to name a new tire, right? So you have to be smart about this. And the most important thing there is don't fall in love with your own vision. Be ruthless. Prove to yourself that there's demand for this product or service before you go for it. All right, so let's say you look at Mr. Chili Pepper right in the eyes and you say, thanks for the stop sign, but you know what? This is real. All right, so if you go for it, this is kind of part 2 of where I'm at. So I want to stop here before I jump into the how-to, because that's really what we're about to go for, and see if you guys have any questions so far. Okay, so feel free to chat something in, but let's keep going. So let's say you've made the decision, I actually want to do it. I wanted to make sure you left tonight's talk with some real hardcore, here are some basics, how to get off the ground, because it's one thing to say, I want to do it, but this stuff there's a lot to it. And I'm hoping maybe I could just give you the basic framework to help you get as much info to then make that decision to jump forward. So some of the very first things you're going to need to do is, well, what kind of entity do I form? Do I want to form an LLC, a limited liability company, a limited partnership, an actual corporation, an Inc., or nothing at all? So a word to the wise, form something. Don't just hang out a shingle and say, I'm in business. The whole purpose of an LLC or a corporation is it's a wall of safety. We call it a corporate veil. And if something goes wrong, and it does sometimes, your business comes off the rail, you do something and boom, it blows up, they can't pierce the corporate veil and come after you personally if you formed an entity. You can do it online. It's not expensive, but I'm begging you, form something and make that your company. It'll have its own tax ID number, but it gives you some security of protecting yourself while the thing that you're bringing to market you're doing business with. All right. The other thing that I highly recommend is spend the money and get yourself some liability insurance. $1 million minimum policy. So if you give some advice and they go do it and all of a sudden, you know, their business blows up and they turn around and are like, what the heck did you say? You know, we took your advice and now, you know, we're getting sued or whatever it is. You'll not only have a corporation or an LLC, but you'll also have some insurance to protect you. So that are just some very common basics. Now, another piece that you'll have to ask is, well, now that I formed the entity, how am I going to get taxed? And you can get taxed as a sole proprietor, an S Corp, a C Corp. These are things you'll probably want to talk to your tax person or talk to an accountant about. But that's important as well. And then the third thing is you have to have a plan. It's not enough just to hang your shingle, flip on your porch light and say, I'm in business, let's roll. You have to do some more work, as is obvious. And that's what I want to spend some time trying to give you some basics. So I'm going to show you now a remarkably busy slide. And as your eyes roll to the back of your head, you're probably saying, what in the world is this? So and I'm going to show you a little close-up of it right now. So when I launched The Garbageman's Guide as the book, we actually wanted to make it a full-blown business. And so I put together all the basics. I did all the writing and the video and the operations, the finance and all of that. And I kept getting people asking me, dude, how did you do all of that? And so I actually created a little side course called Getting It Done. And I said, okay, if you want to get your company off the ground, I think there are 6 key areas. You got to know about video. You got to know how to write. You got to know how to market, how to put a website up, how to get the basics of finance done, and you got to know a little about PR and media. And I thought, well, if those are kind of the 6 basics, could I lay out, like, here's a 3-minute video on how to make a video, like introduction to video, and give you 3 action items and do that. So watch like 20 minutes of video, 6 3-minute little videos, do about half an hour of homework, and then I'll send you week 2. And I did that over 8 weeks. And I guarantee that by the end of the 8th week, your website will be up. You will have shot your first video. You'll have your first pieces of marketing going, that type of thing. So what I did is I kind of grabbed from that, and I'm going to present a little of that tonight. Like, what are the key basics in each of these 6 categories? Because if you've made the decision to go for it, hopefully this will give you a little bit of a framework that you can jump off with. So let's start with video. And so you're probably thinking, why do I need video? Well, video now is an absolutely critical part of your marketing. And video can be you in front of the camera, or it could be your voice or somebody else's voice and some things moving on the screen. But nobody wants to read the internet anymore. They want to watch it. Okay, and if you don't believe that, there's a reason why YouTube is the 2nd biggest search engine outside of Google. All right, video now is the distinctive feature in all our phones. So it's now something you can't ignore. And the tools to create video now are both awesome and ridiculously easy to use. So, okay, how do I get started on video? Here's your first basic to-do list. Get a camera, get a light, and get a microphone. So I've got upstairs, I've got soft boxes and green screens and a high-end camera and a lav mic. Here's your first one. You already own it. Okay, what's the second one? Get a little lav mic that plugs into there. You can get that for about 20 to 40 bucks on Amazon that clips to you. And you can now get a little teeny tiny light that's about yay big that is battery powered. And you can put that on a little $15 stand. And guess what? You are now in the movie business. So for 50 or 75 bucks, you now have a professional studio, because most of this is near 4K video. All right. So that's about as far as you need to go on equipment to get started. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what format works best? Now I use a green screen. I use Final Cut Pro, which Apple makes. It rips the background out. I put one of theirs in and voila. If you saw my promo a couple weeks ago for my talk, that was me upstairs in my daughter's former bedroom with in front of the green screen. Or maybe if you're selling a product, I'm actually working with a friend of mine now who's trying to get a company off the ground, and she's an expert in design and construction. So she shot all these awesome videos about how to choose new countertops or how to find the right contractor in her backyard. So she's just going to reshoot them because a friend of hers has a studio or a showroom. So she's going to go reshoot all of those in her showroom. And those videos will be a lot more effective. So decide what format works well, plan your scripts based on your editorial calendar. And that's the huge takeaway. I'm going to show you what an editorial calendar is. And if you're angsting right now, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to write all of this? Take that and put it right there, because the editorial calendar is like the coolest thing. And it's like, take your stress and boot it out the window. You're going to love that when I get to it. How's that for arrogant? You're going to love it, even though, but it totally changed the way I do my marketing. Ask yourself on your video, do I have worksheets to go with it? People love worksheets. It's a one-page PDF. Use Word, use Pages, use whatever you want, and make a little worksheet to summarize your key points. And then, do you want to do a teleprompter? Now, when I have a complex video to do, I've learned to read or to read like I'm speaking. So that whole promo video that I did, I was actually reading from a script. But I've learned how to make it sound like I'm not reading, and that teleprompter is $150. And you can put anything on there. They've got attachments for the lights, they've got attachments for your iPhone, or my very first teleprompter, I built it out of plywood and a piece of glass and painted it black. So there's DIY information on that. So that's a little bit about video.
Hey,
So
Steve.
now let's talk about everybody's either favorite or horrific subject, and that's writing. Because writing is a critical part of getting your business off the ground. Blogs and things like that. But folks, the kind of business writing I'm talking about does not involve a Pulitzer Prize, okay? We're talking about basic business writing, not I'm going to write the great American novel and it needs to, be this ultra amazing writing. The concept here is write once, use many. And what I mean by that is one blog entry can be repurposed into a video script, which can have points pulled out and repurposed into a tweet or into a very quick Facebook post. And so you write one thing, but you can use it and reuse it in many, many other formats. So you're maximizing your time. When you write, you probably all read, you either listen to podcasts or read certain blogs that fire you up. Emulate that. You don't have to invent it all from scratch. Emulate what inspires you and draw on the content that you already know. You're already a content expert or a product expert. Write about that and write about all those wow moments when people look at you and you're like, oh my gosh, I never knew that before. That's what you want to grab a pen and paper on, which I have scattered all over the house. Plus I have voice notes and OneNote to make sure I capture the idea when it pops into my head. And then pre-write, and I'll talk about that when it comes to the editorial calendar. That's the biggest piece that will help relieve your stress. And if you need to, find an editor. Find someone who will read your stuff, or better yet, take a red pen to it. But writing doesn't have to be sort of this deadly thing. And yeah, last resort, find a ghostwriter. But believe me, folks, you are better writers than you're giving yourself credit for right now. Trust me on that. So what's my to-do list? Choose your tool. What software are you going to use? How do I store my files? How do I make sure they're backed up? I live in Dropbox. There's OneNote, there's Apple's iCloud. Make sure you just have a backup of everything you write. Read what other people are doing. Read every day. That'll really help fire up your writing skills. Outline a couple blog entries, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the editorial calendar. Use OneNote or Evernote. It's just a great place to dump ideas, write a quick outline, but it's all there waiting for you when the inspiration hits to write about that one topic. Find yourself a proofreader or someone that'll just look through your stuff and say, hey, this works. So Ruthie asked a great question. What's a green screen? So let me pause there. Sorry, I didn't see that earlier. So you've probably seen this in a movie where two people are standing there and then like there's this raging space battle going on behind them, and it's like, well, how in the world did they get two human beings in front of a computer generated space battle in the background? A green screen literally is a huge piece of green material, or in my case, I have a special color green that I just painted on the wall. And I'm standing in front of that. That's my background. And then I shoot, hello, everybody, I'm Stephen, blah, 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 and I'm doing my little gig in front of the camera. And then I bring that file over to my video editing program, and I do something called a chroma key. I basically tell the software, see that color green, get rid of it. And because the green is a certain specific color, it rips that green out, and I'm now standing against a black background. I can then stick anything behind it, and boom, I'm on the beach. I'm on the top of the Empire State Building. You've probably seen this in Zoom, where people change their Zoom background, and they're not in front of a green screen. So as they move around, half their head is gone, and then it comes back, and it's gone. But if you actually have a Zoom meeting behind a green screen and check that I have a green screen, and you put a background in, it keeps the outline because it knows how to subtract the background. So if you ever see a behind the scenes of an Avengers movie, they're acting in front of a green or a blue screen. And digitally, you remove that and replace that with something else. That's what a green screen is. They're really fun to work with. So now let's talk about marketing. All right. So when it comes to marketing, I want to see my notes here. So when it comes to marketing, one of the most important things is understanding your demographic and how best to reach them. Okay. I know who my audience is, and I know they use Facebook almost exclusively, or LinkedIn, or they don't use social media at all. I need to mail them something in order to get noticed. So that's one of the most basic pieces of mastering marketing. And then I want you just to tackle the most straightforward basics. All right. Get a website up, figure out your basic social media, and put together some collateral. You can deal with Google AdWords and all that fancy SEO and all that fancy stuff later on. The most important thing is get the basics up and running. That's so important when you're getting your business off the ground, folks, is don't try and do it all now. Do a little bit, get inspired, and then do more later on. But if you try and do the whole enchilada up front, you end up with a 70% to-do list and feel like you've got, balls and chains around your ankles because it feels like you'll never get the business off the ground. So the most important thing too is trying to understand and plan everything in advance. All right. And again, I'm teasing you on the editorial calendar, but I'll get to that in a moment. But the important thing is try and use something like Hootsuite. So if you've got 4 different social media channels, you can throw it all into Hootsuite and say, here's for next week, and post here on Facebook, tweet this, do that. And it does it all for you. So you don't have to run around every day. I got to post to this and I got to do that. You put it all into Hootsuite and it takes care of it for you. And so a lot of the marketing is planning in advance. And then you're also trying to understand, well, what's my feel? Do I want people am I kind of informal or am I very formal, depending on what it is that I'm taking to market? So here's a basic to-do list. First of all, think about that value proposition and elevator pitch. We'll get to that when we talk about PR. Think about your look. So what's this picture on the left? You know how I keep bragging on my daughter all the time? Every time we have one of these, that's her website on the top. And below is the color palette that she chose for herself. She decided as a graphic artist, she was going to do cool looking earth tones and unusual shapes in order to navigate around. So that's what Abby does. You may need something much more formal. I'm in the middle right now of redoing a website for one of my clients. They want a much more formal approach. So you're to do, get your website up, and you can go to something like Squarespace or Wix and have a website up with point and click, no coding required, and you're ready to rock and roll with your website. And now I'm finally going to show you what the heck it is I'm talking about, an editorial calendar. What is this thing? So this is a rolling 12-month spreadsheet. Well, what is it that you have to get out into the world? I know maybe I want to send emails to my mailing list. I want to write certain blog entries. I may have podcast episodes I'd like to do. I may want some pop-ups on my website. I may have a newsletter that I want to put out every other month. What you do is take Excel and go January, February, March, April, or month 1, month 2, month 3. Create these rows and then say, is there a theme for this month? Oh, well, this month is my launch. So I want everything to be geared toward that launch. So you choose a theme for that month. And then you say, okay, I want to do 3 blog entries this month. On January 12th, I want to publish a blog entry called, Why We Love Dogs. A week later, I'm going to put how to choose the best leash. And, a week after that, I'm going to choose, what's the best food for your pet. And then what you do is you plan your content out, and you do that for each month over 12 months. Guess what? Nobody can write well when you have to. When there's a deadline, that's when it's no fun to write. But if inspiration comes from open space, it comes from, I already know what I need to do. I'm going to write blog entries, then I'm going to post for 3 or 4 months. So you map it out, and then you take some time, and you say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to spend a weekend. And I'm going to pre-write 4 months worth of content. And then you get a month off, or maybe 2 months. And you say, okay, well, I got, we're 2 months, that fell off the calendar. I got 2 new months to do. So now I'll write another 2 months worth of stuff. And I'll plan my, month 13 and 14, but I'm only in month 3. This takes all the heat off of you of, oh my gosh, I haven't put a blog entry out in 3 weeks. That's where your marketing fails. But if you lay it out on an editorial calendar and then you pre-write a bunch of it, guess what? 0 stress. Because then you throw all that in Hootsuite and you say go, and bam, 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 everything's published for you. And it's stuff you wrote 3, 4, 5 months ago. That's how you keep your marketing going. Does that make sense to everyone? Awesome. So that's my... this radically changed the way I do my marketing, and I hope it really helps you too. So let's talk about the website. All right. First thing you got to figure out, I got to get a domain name. And unfortunately, we're at a point where .com is pretty taken up. That's why there's .biz, .us, .me, .whatever. So as time goes on, .com kind of is the most serious business one. But the only ones that are pretty much left are some oddball combination of letters and numbers and dashes that nobody's come up with, or I have a really long website name and nobody has this .com, which is too long to write anyway. So I really recommend that you explore some of these other ones, like kink.fm is a local radio station that flows. Abby did, we just got her a domain name, aj-k.biz or something. And it's not .biz, it was .something else. It was one of the more unusual ones, but it flowed really well with her initials. And it came off the tongue really nicely. So make sure you explore those alternates. And remember, your website doesn't need to be very big. You need a home page, all about how amazing you are with a really good photo, a blog, and a contact page. You're done. Add the other stuff later on. But to get it off the ground, that's all you need to get to market, folks. A simple 4-page website, and then go to Squarespace. If you need some help, give Sally, a call. I'll show you how to use it. It's ridiculously simple. You click a line, you choose, put a text box in, you type, and you publish. And it's good to go. Now, Wix, I've done sites for clients and that too, but I'm a big Squarespace guy. Anything that's point and click and WYSIWYG, do that. Learn how to code in JavaScript and HTML5 later on. These guys can do incredible things. They're responsive, so it looks great whether you're on a phone, a tablet, or a desktop. And they've got a zillion pre-done templates where you literally, I want that one, I plug my text, I hit publish, and now I look like I've got a really professional website. All right? So here's your to-do list. Go buy your domain. I put all mine in GoDaddy. There's a zillion different places that they'll have domains. Write out your content. So again, if you've pre-written stuff, grab some of that and see if that's relevant for your first 3 blog entries. And an about page, just, those don't take long to write. If you just Google website do's and don'ts, you'll find all the things to do and not do, or get a hold of Sally. I've got a great do's and don'ts list I'm glad to share with you. It's a little dated because I did it for the course back in 2013, but I just read it before this, and it's remarkably relevant. So I'm glad to share that with you as well. But mostly just get that site up and running. 4 pages, folks. That's all you need. All right. So let me stop before I get to the last 2. Anybody feeling overwhelmed right now? See, that's good. I'm seeing a couple of shaking heads like, okay, keep going. That's good, because everything that's on these to-do lists actually doesn't take that long to do. So let's hit the last 2, finance. All right. Like I said, you don't need to be a CPA. That's not what this is about. You don't need to have your economics major, with a minor in international finance. This stuff is pretty much the same thing that governs your own personal finances. It just needs some proper practices and regular attention. It's not overwhelming, and what I mean by basics, like I said earlier, it's all rooted in common sense. It's about cash management. It's about watching how much debt you take on. It's about understanding, maybe the tax form that I'm using is a little different for my business. But like I said, it is not reasonable to expect your business to be successful if you say, you know what, I'm just going to take all my receipts, throw them in a brown paper bag, and give them to my bookkeeper. You do it. A good business owner who's successful has their hands around the numbers in their business. So what's it take to get your finances pulled together? First of all, QuickBooks or Quicken. It doesn't get any easier than that. You can use Quicken. I recommend QuickBooks Online. It's really, really easy. And the other thing to keep in mind is if you sell out of state, you may have to deal with some sales tax. But again, this stuff is already built into QuickBooks. It manages sales tax for you if you're out of state, or you can get something called Avalara, which is a really easy plugin, and you never have to worry about it. So this is where you want to spend a little bit of time with your bookkeeper or a CPA to help you with what I think this basic to-do list is. First of all, decide who's going to do the finances. Are you going to do them, or do you bring a bookkeeper on to help you? All right. And then set up a system that supports that person, that finance manager, whether it's you or them. I don't deal with paper. Right next to me, to this monitor, is my, I have a scanner. Every receipt gets scanned in, thrown into my credit card receipts. I throw that into the PDF when I download my statement, and I reconcile. 20 minutes every month. That's it. So I don't have paper. Everything I need is there electronically. I absolutely 100% recommend that you get a separate credit card and a separate checking account. This is critical. You have to separate your personal finances from your business finances. Because if you commingle them, that's where you can get yourself in trouble, especially if you get audited someday. So the easiest thing to do, especially if you're forming a new company, you have to get a different checking account for them anyway. And I just carry a credit card for me personally and a credit card for the business. And if I'm buying toner, it goes on the company one. And that way it flows to a different account, and it makes it really easy to keep my personal finances separate from my business. Then you'll decide, okay, what accounts? I have income accounts called consulting. I have an income account called whatever. And then I have expense accounts. If you fire up with QuickBooks Online and you say, I run a consulting business, it pre-populates all of that for you. So you probably won't even have to think about what your accounts are. If you run a construction business or a product company, this software will pre-populate your entire income and expense account, and maybe you'll add one or two that it may not have thought of. And then come up with what I call a month-end close. You'll hear that accounting term a lot. What do I mean by that? Very simple. At the end of the month, I'm going to close my books, which means I'm going to reconcile my credit card. I'm going to reconcile my checking account. I'm going to make sure everything's all buttoned up. And then I'm going to print my reports, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to see how I'm doing. Did I make money? Did I lose money? Did I spend more than I thought I should? Why? And that half hour you spend analyzing what your finance software is telling you lets you make these micro adjustments that help you get your business really, really moving quickly. It helps you adjust to make sure you're on the right track. Make sense? All right. So here's your last piece. You're in, again, where we're sitting is, I'm ready to rock, Stephen. I'm ready to go. So here's your last little piece, PR and media. So what do I mean by that? This is actually an extension of your marketing. All right. What it means is marketing is an investment that you're making. Okay. I got to maybe get Facebook, maybe buy a Facebook ad someday, or I want to invest in Google AdWords, or I have to create a piece of literature that I can hand to somebody to say, here's all about my company. I have to make my website. This is a little different. So, you know, when you watch the news and somehow, some way, this is Mary Smith, from East Lansing, Michigan, who's here to talk to us about X, and then they're interviewing him. Well, how did that person get on there? Like, what makes Mary Smith or Joe Johnson the expert on the topic of alligators or dog food or whatever? That's because those people have approached the media proactively and said, if you're ever doing a segment on dog food, give me a call because I am the nation's leading expert on dog food. All right, now, do you think that person's the nation's leading expert in a country of 230 million people? Yeah, probably not. But the person has reached out to the media and has positioned themselves as a content expert. And guess what that is, folks? It's called free marketing. And that's why I pull PR and media out separately. This is about taking your expertise and bringing it proactively to the media so they pick up on the phone and they call you. So it's an extension of your marketing. It's a great way to spread the word about your company and about your expertise. And so you're constantly looking for ways to say, how do I take my expertise and hook it into current events? So right now, if you have a skill where you're really, really good at sewing, guess what? This is a really good time to be a sewing expert. You notice how many people in the beginning of COVID, they were doing lots of stories about people who were making their own masks? Well, they found those people. My friend Lisa Schneiderman, who's brilliant at PR. Lisa started this amazing thing where she was making masks and giving them away. And guess what? She was also getting a ton of PR around that effort. So now you have to look and say, all right, we've been quarantining for a while, but I have this idea for a business. And these things are happening out in the real world. So I see news stories that's related to me. So I'm going to make sure I pick up the phone and I call KGW and find the editorial director and say, the next time you're doing a story on X, you might want to call me because I know a lot about that particular piece. So you're actively engaging the media. So here's your to-do list, all right, to get the basic PR off the ground. Make a list of all the media you might write about you. Is that television? Is it radio? Is it an influencer? Because everybody's doing Zoom interviews right now with influencers. I have a wonderful friend I met through a seminar, and she is interviewing people, and then she has a secondary interview she posts where she pulls the best 1 minute answer out of it. So she's, again, repurposing her content, but you can either watch the interview or get a 1 minute clip. All right. And so that's great PR for that person that Sherry invites to her interview. So figure out what media outlets would be best for you, and then design what we call a media kit. Well, what's a media kit? It's a basic brochure about who you are. It probably has 1 or 2 press releases in it. Well, why would I write a press release? You know what? Anybody can write a press release about something that's newsworthy. So if you've done something, if you've hosted somebody on a podcast, if something went quasi-viral, write a press release and send it to those media companies, because you never know who will pick up something. I'll give you a very quick example. In fact, one of the companies that I should have put on there, oh my gosh, I've started 6, was Schoolbucks. So my friend Sharon Randall used to sell the software that came with a computer when you bought it. And we came up with this idea to create a rebate catalog. So this was just before the internet really hit. That's how old I am. And we sold, it was a 32-page catalog. We had 29 full-page ads. Apple had the back cover. You go buy the software, you'd send in the rebate coupon, and we would send a rebate to your kid's school. And that was called Schoolbucks. And we printed up 250,000 catalogs, and I did the whole press kit that went with that. And we sent, we sent it out, and we sent a press release out. Schoolbucks launches. Yeah, like how newsworthy is that? And I had the 800 number ringing to my house. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. I pick up the phone, I'm like, hello? And said, hi, my name is whatever, and I'm a school teacher in Boston, and I heard about Schoolbucks. Can we get some catalogs? And I'm like, sure. So I write it down, and I hang up the phone. I'm like, okay. I go back. 4:05, the phone rings. I'm like, hello, hi, I'm a school teacher back in Connecticut. And for the next 3 hours, from 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7, you can see everybody who's calling was marching from East Coast to West Coast. And it is everything I can do to keep up with these phone calls. And I'm hearing call waiting, my voicemail. I'm like, what's going on? I finally asked somebody, where did you hear about us? We sent one press release to a magazine called Education Today, unbeknownst to me, that's read by almost every teacher in the United States. And they pulled this out, put it in a little red box on the side that said, free rebates for your schools. Boom. We were out of catalogs by the end of that morning. So don't underestimate the power of PR, because it could blow your company wide open. So here's another thing. It's called a sizzle reel. It's like a little 2-minute video that's like this fast-paced, really cool little thing about who you are and what you do. So I'll put a link to our sizzle reel up. Sally, remind me of that. And you could watch mine, and they're really fun to make, and it's a great way to market yourself to press. And then give a shot writing a press release and send it out to these media guys, because you never know who might pick you up. So as I close here, the other thing I found is, well, what other resources could I tell people about? And I subscribe to the Cedar Mill newsletter because I just love seeing what's going on in the local neighborhood. And I'm reading through it, and this thing pops up. Okay. Whoops, sorry, let me go back. So this thing pops up. Free small business training and resources. You know, business SOS. So here's something in little tiny Cedar Mill that's free resources if you want to get a company off the ground. So again, there are so many things out there that can help small businesses move. And just don't underestimate the amount of resources that are there. So I close by saying, you are the only one at this point that can make this decision whether it's time to go out on your own. Okay? Nobody can decide, do I want to make this jump out of this weird COVID, can't find a job, and get something off the ground? That's something that you'll need to decide. And no, it's a lot of work. And as I said, you're only as good as your boss. Okay? You have to ask yourself, am I ready to jump in and do this? But the beauty is you're in charge of everything. Now that cuts both ways. You're in charge of everything. You get to make all the decisions, but you're in charge of everything. You have to make all the decisions. So it does cut both ways. And no, it's going to take longer and cost more than you think. That's just, you'll hear this from anybody who says, I want to start my own business. It's rare that the person, starts something, they throw an idea out, they get onto Shark Tank, Mark Cuban gives them $500,000 and they sell the company in 2 months. It happens. In fact, I'm thrilled to tell you that when we got Garbageman's Guide off the ground, there was this woman that wrote an article called the 10 Things Mentally Strong People Do. Her name is Amy Morin. And she I saw the article and I sent her a copy of the book, and she wrote this wonderful article that was published in Forbes at Forbes.com. And it kind of blew up ours. All of a sudden, people started to notice it. Well, that blog, about a month and a half later, had 50 million reads. Amy went on to write 4 New York Times bestsellers. She's done almost every major TEDx event. And she's been published in more than 40 languages. She's an international sensation. She just posted this thing about 3 days ago on LinkedIn. It just said, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. This used to be my side hustle. And so I wrote her, I'm like, you probably don't remember me, but, and she wrote back, she's like, are you flipping kidding me? She said, you were one of the first people that I wrote about. She said, and it just was great to, have hooked up in the beginning. I'm like, it's just been fun watching you have this meteoric rise. So it happens, but don't count on it. All right. But I'm here to tell you one thing, folks. There is nothing more satisfying on the face of this planet than being your own boss and owning your own company. And as much work as it is a sense of satisfaction that I could go on another 30 slides and tell you why I think it's so neat. But with that, I want to open it up for questions. I want to take off this screen share. So hang on a second. Let me get out of this and go back to the meeting. Hello. Where's my control panel? Stop share. So Ruthie asked one question. Are phone calls or are emails most effective today for PR? Yeah, that's a great question, Ruthie. I would say a cold call to a busy executive producer is not going to work. I took a wonderful course from a woman named Rachel Handfling, and Rachel used to run the green room at the Oprah show. And she ended up, she's got a wonderful personality, and she used to know my next door neighbor, a fellow named Brendan Burchard, who's like a god in the whole online business thing. Just Google him, and he kind of owns the internet these days. But when Brendan went on Oprah, he met Rachel, and he's like, you need to do your own course. And so she did a course on PR and media. And I was one of the first ones in to kind of beta test the course. And I learned so much. Like if you go for a TV interview, you always bring a change of clothes, because yes, you may spill on your shirt, and you always drink through a straw. Just weird little things like that. But Rachel spent a lot of time talking about how do you capture the attention. And email's probably good. If you have a connection, that's helpful. But yeah, generally I would start with an email and then a follow-up, and there's nothing wrong after an email with a phone call follow-up after that. And I'm not suggesting being a pest, but I'm suggesting that you be a pest. This is all about squeaky wheel. Other questions? Just unmute and ask away.
Hi. So I have like no experience, but I have a lot of ideas. And one of my ideas I know, well, at least as far as I know, is pretty unique.
Yeah.
It's for a product. Basically, it's a type of couch cover, which sounds really boring, but as far as I know, there's nothing else like it from the minimal research I've done on the internet. And like when I've talked to people about it, the only advice so far I got was my mom was like, well, you need to copyright that because, you know, somebody could steal that idea. And she's like, it's really easy to copyright something. And I'm like, okay. And I looked it up, and then there's like apparently all these different kinds of copyrights, and some of them are really expensive and some of them aren't. I don't even know.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what the first step is. Well, first of all, my one problem is, other than ideas, and kind of went through some of your checklist at the beginning, and some of them I have, and a lot of them I don't. But like I don't really know how to sew and stuff, so I don't so I can't make the product myself, but
Right.
I can design it, and I have the idea, and it's one of these things that can be customized and
Yep.
would be. So what do I do? What's like my very first step for like, how do I even research it besides looking on the internet? I also have a name for this product, and I've looked that up on the internet, and I can't seem to find anything of that name.
Good.
And it does seem to be COVID compatible as far as I know, because it's, you know, something that my guess would be like an almost like either like an as seen on TV kind of product, or but it would be mostly like web-based to order it and customize it and pick from the different whatever. So anyway, I just have no idea like where to start. Should I copyright it first? Should I do market research? Should I have somebody make some samples? And where do I find those people?
Okay.
And what do I do?
All right. Well, there are three components to your question, and I could break those down easily for you. So, as far as the copyright, you're really talking about a patent. If it turns out that, because you can't copyright a thing, you can copyright something that you've written. You can trademark a name or a mark, like the Nike swoosh is a trademark. But if it's a physical product, you tend to have a patent on it. And there's two types of patents. There's what we call a provisional patent. And that's just, I'm just going to file it. I'll submit some basic drawings, and it's kind of a holding place, but it's not enforceable. An actual patent can be pretty expensive. Now, if you have a patent on something, it also now dramatically increases the value of your company, because now you have something that nobody else has. It's not a guarantee that somebody won't knock it off, because then you have to have the resources to go sue them for patent infringement. But patents do offer a sense of discouragement if people are trying to steal the idea. So a provisional patent might be something that you would do a little bit further down the road if you find, wow, it looks like there really is something here, and I want to start marketing it. You would want to think about the notion of patenting. As far as I have the idea, but I can't make it, there are a lot of factories all around the planet, both domestically and overseas, that sew. And so you would do some research to try and figure out which vendors could I get to who may be able to make me some prototypes, because I would highly recommend, it's one thing when people say, wow, that sounds neat. I would buy that. Remember that question I asked earlier, be ruthless with yourself? Everybody will say they'll buy something until they have to buy it. And then you'll find out if they'll really buy it or not. Okay. So making some prototypes, making an investment in some prototypes, and then trotting those out to potential people that might be your customer, whether you're selling direct or you might sell in the store, you can definitely find people who can manufacture for you. Okay. And so that would be a place to try and turn your idea into something physical that you can hold. And then as far as the name goes, one of the easiest things to do is, if the name is genuinely unique, lock up the domain name. Go spend the $19 and go buy whatever it is. I have this great name for this cool couchcovering.com. Go get that. And then you could always trademark the name later on. So you file the trademark, and that's where you get the little TM after something. And then it takes some time. The Patent and Trademark Office opens it up. People have a chance to object. And if nobody objects after a certain period of time, then it's a registered trademark, and that's the little R with the circle around it.
Okay.
So that just takes time to grind through. But a trademark is good because it offers you immediate protection up front. So it's kind of like a provisional patent, but it's got a little bit more beef. So
that's just for the name part?
For the name.
Not the symbol, because the symbol was the other thing.
Well, no, you can go ahead and trademark a symbol and the name. So if you have the product and you've got some cool little graphic with the couch, like right behind me on my wall here, you can kind of see them. Let me go that way. See those frames on the wall right behind me? The top one is a little sweeping man. That's what we got when we got our registered trademark for the Garbageman's Guide. I made that. And then the words, the Garbageman's Guide, is also trademarked. And I just framed it because those were my first 2 trademarks, and I thought that was cool. So, so you'll trademark that. And then if you find you want some protection, you might think about patenting, but you don't really invest in a patent until you really feel like you're going to go to market. You are a little bit afraid, which is why you have to be careful who your vendor is, because you want to make sure you have a reputable vendor and you have a contract that says they promise not to take the idea and that they recognize this as your intellectual property. So those would be some steps I would say to get you going in concert with some of the other basics that I talked about tonight.
Okay. And like, so just to maybe to summarize, the first thing would probably be to get the website, the domain name.
I would get that first.
And then find somebody to make some prototypes.
Yeah.
And then how do I find people? Do I just ask friends and family on Facebook, hey, would you buy this? Or do I is there other companies?
Would want to ask that. You would want to, are you planning on selling direct to them? Is this a direct sale, or would you sell in a store?
I think I would start off by just selling direct from the website.
I would not ever ask friends and family, because you'll never get an honest opinion from friends and family. What you want to do is ask complete strangers who don't know you and have nothing to, so ask if a family member could set you up with somebody who may have an interest in that, who can give you objective, brutal feedback. That's who you need the feedback from, because I found in my years of business that friends and family are great, but they're not objective. What you want to do is go to somebody who has, as they say, there's no dog to hunt, or whatever the expression is. Well, just give you some straight up honest feedback, and they won't feel bad when they do it. Those are the people you need the opinion of. That's what I would recommend. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
I actually have a question, but I wanted to follow up to Tamar's topic that she brought up. And I can't remember if you brought this up, Stephen, or not, because we had talked about it before your talk, and that was people who want to start a business with a product as well. It could be with a service as well, and that is providing potentially the product to a few people
Yeah.
ahead of time,
Yeah.
or when you first start out, either thought leaders, or that would be for a service, or maybe not, it could be for a product as well. Or anyway, can you comment on that?
Absolutely. Actually,
And then I have a question.
yeah, actually, I'm a little bit of truth telling. Sally and I actually chatted about this yesterday. So it's not like that was a pre-planned question, but it's a really important one. If I want to get started and I actually am going to bring my product or service to market, how do I generate some interest up front? Well, everybody loves free stuff, folks. Let's just, kind of call that one straight out. So let's say that you want to start some sort of online marketing thing. All right, I want to monetize my expertise and I want to sell a course that I created. Well, online marketing, that's all about a value sequence. So you want to say, I wrote an ebook. Get my free ebook by putting in your email. Now you're building an email list, which I can't tell you if you're in the online business, that is gold with a capital G. Okay, because marketing, learning how to market to your email list is critical. And once somebody signs up and they get access to your free book, they're interested in that topic. So over the next 6 weeks or so, you're going to send them one email with more free content. Here, I hope you're enjoying the ebook. Now, in the ebook, we talked about X. Now, here's a 2-minute video that takes a deeper dive into X. And they're like, wow, well, I didn't know that. And then next week they get something that, and by the end of that value sequence, they've gotten more free stuff and you've built credibility before you even ask them to go to a landing page to read more about the course you want them to buy. So that's how you give things away and stimulate interest if you're trying to sell something online, like a course. Now, if you are trying to sell a physical product, like Tamar, is that the right way? Yes, like Tamar was talking about. Yeah, give freebies away. Okay, that's very important. So let's say you make your prototypes and you get this objective feedback where people are like, wow, dude, I love this thing. You're thinking, okay, step 2, before I actually sell, who could I give away to that could lead to more sales? So maybe now you're spending some money on your first production run, or it's pre-production, and you make 30 of them. And that's your investment that you're making. But you've given them strategically to 30 people who can open doors for you. And then suddenly that turns into a PO, or they find a way to help you reach an audience, whether it's online or whatever it is. So you can, grab the corner of Etsy or whatever it is. Now suddenly people know who you are. So giveaways are important on a physical product. If it's a service that you're trying to sell, that's all about the free 30-minute consult. All right? Because I have to tell you what my brilliance is, but you won't know by reading the website. That's my intro. So, yep, free 30-minute consultation. And I'm telling you folks, at minute 25, you say, I hope you're getting a lot for this. We got 5 minutes left. But if you've done your job in the first 25 minutes, they're not going to want to hang up. In which case they say, I really would like to keep this going. You say, great, we can, I'm $175 an hour and I can just hit go on the clock and we can keep rolling because we are on to something here. Right? You baited the hook. It's set already. So there's 3 things: a value sequence and a free giveaway if you're online marketing. Free giveaways if it's a physical product to key people who may be able to open a door to sales for you or marketing to get the word out, or a free consult or free X amount of time with a prospect in order for them to just experience your brilliance and hook them. So that's how I'd answer how to kind of prime the pump to get yourself moving.
Thank you. I was on mute. I do have a question in addition to that. So let's say you're working already.
Yeah.
You have a job, you're working as an employee.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I can do this by myself. okay, I can just break away and I can be a consultant by myself, or I want to do something totally different. I've been doing something with a friend, or you know, I get so many compliments on these cookies that I bake, you
Yeah.
know, and I think I can do this by myself, whatever it is, service or product, whatever it is. What I'm trying to figure out is, how do I best evaluate for myself if I can financially do this? Because my company that I work for pays for taxes. I don't have self-employment taxes.
Mhm.
Um, they pay for all the business insurance, liability insurance, all of that. They pay for all my professional fees. They pay for the bulk of my medical insurance, which I pay a group rate on, which I wouldn't pay for on my own.
Yep.
Continuing ed classes, if that's relevant to what I want to continue to do, and paid time off.
Yep.
So how do I go about evaluating whether or not this is something I can take the big leap and do financially?
Yeah, no, it's great question. And there's a razor's edge that you're dancing on here. And I can tell you that I have been self-employed now for, probably 20 years. Yeah, and I pay Kaiser $7,000 a year for the privilege of paying them another $7,000 in deductibles before they'll even pay a penny, because I'm an individual. So, but I've done, when I was CEO at EF Recovery, even though I was a 1099 consultant all those times, I negotiated all of their medical rates, and it was killing me because it was like $400 a month for a $15 copay and so on and so on. So, and I pay 15% taxes. I pay the employer and the employee side of my taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's pros and cons. So to your question, how do I decide if I can afford it? So I will tell you that any entrepreneurial venture, no matter what you're doing, any entrepreneurial venture involves risk, period. You can't get away from that, because if it wasn't risky, everybody would do it. So, but the rewards when it's successful are off the charts. Okay. That's why, Mark Cuban owns basketball teams, and that's why, Bill Gates flies in a private jet. So when it hits, you can end up with a very, very nice living. I'm not talking about billions a year. People, solopreneurs, if you will, make really good money and have very comfortable lives and the flexibility of their own time. So to evaluate when's the jumping off point, I think it goes back to the question that Tamar was asking, which is that you have to prove that there's something there first. And there's some nights and weekends. There may be a few sick days where you call in sick, but you're actually spending time during a business day developing or meeting with a potential client. And if you feel, after you evaluate, that there really is demand for the marketing of your expertise, whether that's a product or a service, then I would recommend there's some math. And that math is, okay, what do I think my revenue stream could look like? Like, no kidding. If I'm putting all my eggs in this one person's basket, don't leave your day job. Because it's about, if you're going to consult, you have to end up with a stable of clients. You know that you have to do a great job, and know that that person will recommend you, but you've got to market to find 2 or 3 or 4 clients. So I think you do a realistic expectation of what your revenue would look like. And then you have to look at, well, what are my reasonable expenses if I'm on my own to just run the business? Well, I don't have much of an expense as a consultant. I buy toner, I buy paper, and I write off the normal stuff. But being a consultant's not that expensive. Pens don't cost a lot of money, right? But then there's the other things you then have to say, okay, outside of my business expenses, now comes the big stuff. Okay, I got to pay my own medical. I got to pay another 7.5%, 8% of payroll taxes, because I'm responsible for that. And I've got to buy my own insurance. So you have to factor the cost of that in. Now, the flip side, by the way, is you open up, if you do go solo, you have to open up an individual 401k. And if you make enough cash, you can fund both sides of a 401k, employer and employee. And that will shave thousands of dollars off your federal tax bill. That's one of the biggest advantages of being self-employed, is that you're not paying for stuff with after-tax dollars anymore. You get to tell Uncle Sam, no, my income was actually here because I took that money and I put it in my own retirement account. So there's a crossover point where it makes more sense and you can actually save more money in taxes than it costs you paying payroll taxes in your own medical. So Sally, there's some math to be done in order to then say, does this look like this dog will hunt? Do I really feel like it's time now to jump off? And again, I'm glad to help, with those calculations. But if you feel the demand is there and it's stable enough, it's pretty straightforward at that point to put a spreadsheet together and say, over 12 months, does this look like I could really make a living? And can I kind of tighten the belt during those 12 months as I'm feeding my new business, knowing that by the end of those 12 months, I have a high degree of confidence that I'll be taking in a lot more money than I'm spending, and I will have a stable amount of revenue that I could keep going.
Mhm.
Does that help answer your question?
Totally. And probably talking to a financial advisor,
Yeah.
maybe somebody who specializes in the type of work you do or the industry or something.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you've got a runway and, that might be the time to say, I've worked for X number of years, I'm going to invest some of my savings in myself. But if you're just graduated from college, you don't have that runway unless you've got really, really nice parents.
Mhm.
So it's a different calculus.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean it's any less valid. It just means you have to think through, what are the ramifications if I put a year into trying to create my own business? And it's doable on both sides.
Thank you.
You bet. Other questions? All right, Ruthie, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand go up earlier. Whoops, unmute yourself.
Sorry, it was a very specific question when you were speaking about capturing emails from the freebies that you provide.
Yeah.
I wondered about the legality of mining those emails.
It's really easy, Ruthie. It's not a mine. What happens is they go to a landing page that says, get my freebie. And there's a little disclaimer that just says, I understand I'm joining your mailing list if I give you my email. They've opted in. At that point, it's a valid opt-in, and you can mark it until they hit unsubscribe. But if the value that you're bringing them is so good, they're never going to hit unsubscribe because you're blowing their mind.
Good.
And that's the core of what we've talked about tonight. That's the soul searching that each of you needs to do as you evaluate this, stay with the job or hop out on my own. What do you know? How much do people need that? And if you feel it's marketable and you've got the passion to drive it, you will create a successful business. Is that a guarantee? No. It's called COVID. Nobody saw this coming. So that changed the game. But a lot of the people who had a business here now have a COVID compatible business here because they adapted, and their audience still wants to hear from them, whatever that is. So as I've given you a lot of to-dos and things to think about, and yeah, maybe it threw a little water on that fire of yours, don't let it snuff it out. It's just logistics, folks, and it's all overcomable because what punches right through that is your passion. The fact that you have what the world needs and you need to bring it to them. And that's what should drive your decision about whether or not you should get a company off the ground. Never, ever lose sight of that, no matter what's coming your way. And while you're skeptical and you're like, I'm sure I'm going to do this, let that passion just burst out of you, because that is ultimately going to help you get your company off the ground. And that's what makes you unstoppable. On that note, what other questions? What else can I answer for anybody?
That was awesome.
I'll ask one quick question.
Please.
And then I know that we're past the time, but when someone's at a point in which they feel like they can go out and look for investors, how do you weigh like crowdfunding versus angel investors versus, you know, family and friends? And like, what do you suggest the first steps are at that point in which you have put in your own investments and you know that you're going to need to be getting investors from outside of your own pocket?
God, it's a great question. And by the way, guys, this is one of my biggest passions. I'll stay on all night. I mean, I love talking to entrepreneurs about entrepreneurialism and getting companies off the ground. So I'll stay as long as you need me to, because I love this stuff. So that's a huge question. It's time for investment. So the first thing I would just say as a precursor, you have to have shown that you put your own skin in the game. Okay. And that doesn't mean you have to put $100,000 into your idea. It means that you've shown somehow, some way, you've made sacrifices and you've proven enough that this thing has legs, whatever it is. All right. Now, crowdfunding has radically altered the, from the time I got Routeware funded, it was a 32-page business plan, 3-year financials, P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And then I Oregon Entrepreneur, you know, I went OEN, I did all of it. Crowdfunding's radically changed that. So that has offered funding to people that have always traditionally been blocked from approaching that venture capital mountain. What I love, it's given women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, people with physical disabilities and challenges. I mean, all those that have traditionally been shunned or had an extra burden to carry are now getting businesses off the ground. And I just love anything that disrupts and flattens the playing field. So from a crowdfunding perspective, I think it depends on who the crowd is and how good it is, what it is you're trying to bring. Like, is it really ringing the bell right now? I can tell you that my neighbor up the street, Ryan Grepper, came up with the coolest, or the coolest cooler. Now, the whole thing blew up because it didn't work. But at that time, a few years ago, it was the biggest funded project in Kickstarter history at that point. I mean, we were all sitting there looking at growing $250,000 a day. It was just wild. And we're all like clustered over his house going, dude, this is so much fun to watch. So he hit a nerve. And it made sense to crowdfund it because he had something people really, really wanted. Now, friends and family money, I guess I would say it depends on how much you need and how formal it is. All right, if you're looking to launch a B2B network connectivity product that may rival or disrupt Citrix, yeah, you're probably going to want to go the VC route. If you've proven this and you've got 3 or 4 people who have very formally approached this project, there's a lot of code involved, there's a lot of IP involved, that's probably past friends and family unless they're fairly well heeled, because you're probably going to need a lot of money to get that off the ground. You know, we got Routeware going. We had to revise everything because we were ready to close and the planes went in the towers. And almost every angel closed their checkbook. So I had to radically scale the business plan back, and we opened with 1/4 of the amount of money we had lined up. But we did it, and we did subsequent financing rounds after that. So, but that was myself, my dad, and a local venture fund, and 3 other individuals, but they were angel investors. But that was a very formal company with a very formal launch, onboard computing for the garbage business. Okay, that needs institutional and experienced angel investors. If the idea is a little bit more casual, or it's a fairly disruptive service, that may bode very well for crowdfunding. Or if it's a really cool product that's somewhat disruptive, again, crowdfunding might be a great way to go. If it's, I just need 50 grand to see if this will go a little further, that's probably friends and family. Because honestly, 25 to 50,000 in a, and I don't want to stereotype here, but in sort of a average middle class family, you can usually piece together aunts, uncles, and cousins and come up with about $25 to $50,000 if they believe in the vision. And so I'm being a little long-winded here, but I think it's a combination of how much do you need, how formal is the product, and what's its expected audience. And I think the combination of those two things will dictate which of those three you would go with. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And
Yeah.
piggybacking on that, if someone was going the VC route and based off of sort of your beginning slides of how experience is really important, and if you've sort of learned on the job and have that really strong skill set, having a higher degree just really isn't as important. But I mean, as like a female going to a VC firm where obviously you hear all about women versus men asking for investors, it's harder for women to get people on board. Are there trends, and is it kind of commonly known that if people are coming with like an MBA or a master's, that investors are more likely to be susceptible to investing? I mean, it also might not be information out there. I'm just curious if that's something that is like commonly known or not as recognized.
Let me answer it this way. People are going to give you money because they're investing in you. They're not investing in your product. I mean, just watch a couple episodes of Shark Tank and look at the deals that get dumped and the deals that get funded. What's the one thing you hear Barbara say, Mark say, all of them say, Mr. Wonderful? They all basically say that they are investing in the person because they believe that person has the passion, the vision, the knowledge, and the smarts to take it to the finish line and make them a return on their money. That's the whole concept of investing. So I've dealt with entrepreneurs that have a ton of initials after their name. I wouldn't give them a nickel. But I've also dealt with entrepreneurs that totally get it. I'll tell you right now, the guy that I'm working with, we're in the middle of a huge deal that we're trying to put together. He's never graduated from high school. But that guy knows more about how to run a company than half the MBAs that I've ever met. So my view is, I don't think there are statistics out there per se that say if you have an MBA, you're more than likely to get venture funded. But if you're in the venture community, I think it's is it just you, or can you bring a partner in and together the two of you are bringing a lot of street credit? Okay, I think that helps, especially if you have 2 or 3 people that really know their stuff and you've really proven the market and you have your pitch down and you have absolute confidence that this thing has a real shot at success. So I think with VC, you have to be more formal. I think a group may be better than an individual. I would give you that advice. I would absolutely categorically, especially in this BLM Me Too moment that our nation is in, if I were you, I'd be seeking women-owned venture funds and just bypass the BS altogether, because there's a lot of that that's forming right now. There are specific funds that are targeting young entrepreneurs, young female entrepreneurs. So I would certainly try and find the VC funds that may be more sympathetic to, yeah, I don't have 10 years of experience, but I got these 4 really smart people and we have this awesome idea and I just need some face time to vet it, because look at all the work that we've done to prove we think there's something here. As opposed to, trying to call up, Vulcan Ventures run by Bill Gates and say, hey, can I have a couple $1 million? So I would say try and target where you're going. But I think you do better having a couple of people who really know a lot and you've proven it and done the hard work already, and then go find a VC that is a little bit out of the mainstream. That would be advice that I would give.
Awesome, thank you.
You bet. Anything else? Any other questions? Well, thanks everybody. I'm thrilled everybody stayed on for so long. I always love when everyone stays after school. So this is great. I can't tell you how much I enjoy these. I was a little worried no one was coming, but this was really, really fun. So thank you very
Great.
much for having me.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
is
you,
excellent.
Stephen.
You bet.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So for everybody who's still here, I should have pulled it up. Oh my gosh, Ruthie, next week is Bonnie, right?
No, we have our talk about philanthropy.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I was paying attention to Stephen instead of preparing about what I was going to talk about. Yeah, so next week is Sonia Marie Lycum, same time, Tuesday, 6 o'clock Pacific time and 9 o'clock Eastern. And Sonia Marie Lycum is going to be talking about all the really, really great benefits. I don't remember the title of her talk. I know the gist of her talk, and talking about philanthropy and all the great benefits of that, personally, professionally, and otherwise. So, and she's a great speaker. So anyway, this is great. And thank you again. Thank you again, Stephen, and thank you to everybody who came. And I hope you guys have a really good week.
Thanks, Sally.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
You're welcome.